In a quiet, remote village nestled among rolling hills and whispering streams, life unfolded at its own rhythm. The villagers rose with the sun and slept under a blanket of stars. Amid this serene simplicity lived Layla, a young woman known for her untiring strength and solid spirit. But beneath her calm exterior lay a heart burdened by the weight of sacrifice. Layla's world revolved around her younger brother, Amir. Once vibrant and full of dreams, Amir's life had changed irreversibly after a tragic accident left him confined to a wheelchair. At just 19, Layla had stepped into the roles of caregiver, provider, and protector, putting aside her own aspirations. The bond between them was unbreakable, yet it came with a cost. Layla's dreams faded into the background, replaced by an unrelenting routine of farm work and caregiving. Marriage proposals from men across the region came and went, but Layla turned them all down. "Amir needs me," she would say, as though it explained everything. But in the quiet hours of the night, when the village slept, she would sit by the window and stare into the darkness, wondering if she had condemned herself to a life of quiet resignation. One scorching afternoon, as Layla returned from the market with a basket of fresh produce, the hum of an unfamiliar vehicle echoed through the dusty village streets. Villagers gathered, curious about the rare sight, a sleek black car gleaming under the sun. The car came to a halt near the village square, and out stepped a tall man, his presence commanding yet approachable. Layla barely noticed, too preoccupied with her thoughts. She walked past the growing crowd, focused on reaching home. But as she rounded a corner, she collided with someone, and the basket tumbled from her hands. Fruits scattered across the ground. "I'm so sorry," came a deep voice. Layla looked up to find herself face to face with Elias, the man from the car. His eyes were sharp yet warm, and his demeanor was disarmingly calm. "It's fine," she muttered, kneeling to gather her fruits. Elias crouched to help her, despite his pristine clothes. "Let me," he insisted. Their hands brushed briefly as they reached for the same apple, and Layla quickly pulled back. She wasn't used to strangers being this considerate, especially one who seemed so out of place in the modest surroundings of her village. "Thank you," she said curtly, taking the basket from his hands and hurrying away without another word. That might have been the end of their interaction, but fate had other plans. The following day, Elias called for a meeting with the villagers. He introduced himself as a promoter, determined to invest in agricultural projects and improve the community's infrastructure. His words were met with skepticism by some and excitement by others. Layla listened from the edge of the crowd, her arms crossed. She didn't trust outsiders, especially those with grand promises. But something about Elias intrigued her. His sincerity didn't feel learned, and his plans seemed well thought out. After the meeting, she overheard some elders discussing his proposal. Their concerns mirrored her own. Would his involvement bring genuine help or hidden agendas? Later that evening, as she fed the chickens in her yard, a shadow fell across her path. Startled, she turned to see Elias standing by the gate, a hesitant smile on his face. "Apologies for showing up unannounced," he said. "I asked around and was told you might know the village better than anyone." Layla frowned. "Why would someone like you need my help?" Elias chuckled. "Because someone like me doesn't know how things truly work here. But you do." She studied him, her instincts telling her to be cautious. Yet there was something disarming about him. Against her better judgment, she invited him in, offering water from the well. As they talked, Layla realized Elias wasn't like the others who had come to the village before, promising change but delivering nothing. He genuinely wanted to learn about the people's struggles and dreams. She found herself sharing stories she hadn't told anyone in years, about the loss of her parents, Amir's accident, and the sacrifices she had made. Elias listened intently, his expression shifting from empathy to admiration. "You've carried so much on your shoulders," he said softly. "More than anyone should." Layla looked away, uncomfortable with his attention. "I'm just doing what I have to." "Maybe," Elias said, "but that doesn't make it any less remarkable." From that day on, their paths crossed often. Elias sought her input on his projects, and Layla, despite her initial hesitancy, found herself drawn to his vision and sincerity. Slowly, she began to see him not just as a wealthy outsider, but as someone who understood the complexities of her world, and admired her for surviving them. Their connection grew, but Layla's guarded heart kept her from fully embracing the possibility of something more. She had spent so long putting others first that the idea of someone seeing her as more than a caregiver or a worker felt both thrilling and terrifying. Yet, Elias's persistence was gentle, his intentions clear. He didn't try to fix her or pity her. He simply wanted to walk alongside her, offering support if she needed it. And so, in the quiet corners of the village, under the stars and amidst the fields, a bond began to form. One rooted in respect, understanding, and the possibility of a love neither had expected to find. But Layla didn't want to be more close to Elias, as she was feeling something change in Elias' behavior. Then she decided to leave the village with silence. Layla's decision to leave the village wasn't one she made lightly. For years, she had put Amir's needs above her own, her love for him serving as both her strength and her chain. But the growing ache in her heart, the yearning to discover who she was beyond her role as a caregiver, could no longer be ignored. One morning before the sun rose over the hills, Layla packed a small bag. She stood at the threshold of their modest home, her heart heavy with guilt yet filled with determination. Amir, still asleep, lay unaware of the journey she was about to take. She left a note on the table, her handwriting shaky. "Amir, I love you more than words can say. But I need to do this, for me, for us. I need to find out who I am, and I promise to come back stronger. Take care of yourself until then. Forever your sister, Layla." The city greeted her with chaos and opportunity. The noise, the endless sea of strangers, and the towering buildings all felt overwhelming at first. She rented a tiny apartment on the edge of the city, a place barely big enough to fit her bed and a small table. But it was hers, a space she had claimed on her own. Layla quickly realized that life in the city was far from easy. She took on odd jobs, cleaning houses, selling flowers on street corners, and even delivering packages. The work was grueling, but every coin she earned felt like a small victory. Each day brought her closer to a sense of independence she had never known before. Despite the pride she felt in her progress, there were nights when loneliness wrapped around her like a heavy blanket. She missed Amir's laughter, the comforting familiarity of the village, and the scent of wildflowers carried by the breeze. In those moments, she would sit by the small window of her apartment, staring out at the glittering city lights, and whisper into the night, "Amir, I hope you're okay." But for every pang of homesickness, there were moments of discovery. Layla found joy in simple things. A warm cup of coffee from a corner cafe, a kind smile from a stranger, the thrill of navigating the city streets without fear. She even found herself befriending her neighbor Aisha, a spirited young woman who had also left her village to chase her dreams. Aisha became Layla's guide to city life, teaching her how to navigate the job market and introducing her to the city's hidden gems. "You're stronger than you think, Layla," Aisha told her one evening as they sat on the rooftop of their building, sharing stories of their pasts. "Leaving everything behind takes courage. Most people never dare to take that step." Layla smiled faintly, though her thoughts drifted to Amir. Was he managing without her? Did he resent her for leaving? Those questions haunted her, but she knew there was no turning back now. As the weeks turned into months, Layla began to feel a quiet pride in her accomplishments. She secured a stable job as a clerk in a small bookstore, a role that felt almost too good to be true. Surrounded by shelves filled with stories, she found solace in the written words of others, their journeys giving her strength for her own. Still, in the quiet hours of the night, Layla's thoughts would return to Amir. Had he forgiven her? Did he understand why she had left? She often imagined him rolling through the village streets, carrying on without her. The image brought both pain and hope. She prayed that, like her, he was finding his own strength in her absence. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, Layla stood on her apartment's balcony, gazing at the stars. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to dream, not just for Amir, but for herself. She imagined building a life where she wasn't defined by sacrifice alone, where she could embrace her own identity and passions. The city had become a place of both challenge and renewal. Layla knew she still had a long way to go, but for the first time, she felt the stirring of something new. Hope. Hope that her journey wasn't just about escaping her past, but about becoming the person she was always meant to be. Months later, as she sat in her dimly lit apartment, a knock at the door startled her. Opening it, she found Amir. He looked weary, but his eyes held determination. "I couldn't let things end like this," he said, his voice trembling. "I know you left for yourself, and I'm proud of you. But I had to see you." Layla's heart ached. Seeing Amir reminded her of everything she had fought to leave behind, yet his presence stirred a deep longing. "Amir, she began, but words failed her. Amir's voice softened. "I don't blame you for leaving, Layla. You gave up so much for me, and I want you to know that I'm okay now. I've learned to manage on my own. But I didn't come here to guilt you. I came because I miss you." Their reunion marked the beginning of a delicate reconciliation. Over time, Amir saw how much Layla had grown. Her confidence, her sense of self. He no longer saw her as his caregiver, but as a woman rediscovering her strength. Elias, too, reappeared in Layla's life, offering her a partnership in a project that could change the lives of countless villagers. Torn between her old life and the new opportunities before her, Layla realized her journey wasn't about choosing one over the other. It was about finding harmony. Elias's feelings for Layla deepened, but he gave her space to navigate her emotions. "I'm here, Layla," he said one evening as they watched the sunset. "Not to take anything from you, but to walk beside you if you'll let me." Amir, Elias, and Layla's paths intertwined as they collaborated on a project to bring sustainable farming methods to the village. The work was challenging, but it brought them closer, forcing Layla to confront her deepest fears. Could she balance love, family, and her newfound independence? One evening, as they stood in the fields overlooking the village, Elias turned to Layla. "You don't have to choose, Layla. Your strength has always been in bringing people together. Maybe that's your gift." Layla's heart swelled. For so long, she had believed she had to sacrifice one dream for another. But in that moment, she saw a future where she could embrace all parts of herself: the caregiver, the dreamer, and the woman ready to love again. Layla and Amir returned to the village, not as the siblings bound by tragedy, but as individuals ready to forge new paths. Elias became a steadfast partner, not just in work but in life. Together, they built a life rooted in respect, understanding, and shared dreams. As the village flourished under their efforts, Layla stood at the crossroads of her journey and realized she was no longer afraid of the unknown. Her strength was not in what she had sacrificed, but in what she had reclaimed: her identity, her dreams, and her capacity to love. Layla smiled as she looked at Amir and Elias. "I don't know what the future holds," she said, "but I know one thing: I'm ready to face it, with all of you by my side." The past, no longer a weight, had become a foundation. The future, once a distant dream, was now a promise of endless possibilities. Layla's story reminds us that life is not about choosing one path over another. It's about having the courage to build a life that honors every piece of who we are.